Have you ever heard the phrase, I have more money than month? Maybe you've even used it. A recent study found that 53% of Americans report they are living paycheck to paycheck. No cushion, no breathing room, just eagerly awaiting that next payday. And this isn't limited to low income earners or different generations. It is a problem that is affecting people of all ages and stages of life. If you would describe yourself as living paycheck to paycheck, but you're sick of it, you're done, this video it's for you. Today, I'm going to give you practical tips and encouragement to help you break that vicious paycheck to paycheck cycle. I'm Sarah, I'm a certified financial educator, and I created this channel, It's All His, to talk about finances and managing our money from a biblical worldview. If that sounds like something that would encourage you, help you, and spur you on, please consider subscribing for new videos every week. But I wanna first start off by defining our terms, because the phrase paycheck to paycheck could mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. When I say paycheck to paycheck, I'm basically talking about sort of three major criteria. The first is that you are always eagerly awaiting that next payday. Your eyes are fixed on that date on the calendar because you need that money to cover essentials. My next criteria would be you don't have an emergency fund. You don't have enough set aside that you could take care of an unexpected expense of $500 or more. And no, a credit card does not count as an emergency fund. And speaking of credit cards, that's my last criteria. If you find yourself relying on a credit card to get you between paychecks for essential items, that would also qualify you as living paycheck to paycheck. There are a number of reasons one might find themselves living paycheck to paycheck. Some of them are not your fault. Unexpected things can happen that can derail us financially. But the majority of the reasons why we find ourselves living paycheck to paycheck are because of poor money management decisions, lack of wisdom in the area of managing your finances. We have to start out with just being really honest with ourselves and assessing the situation about why we ended up in a paycheck to paycheck cycle. Because taking time to figure out the why is essential if we're going to figure out the how of getting out of that cycle. And I really want to encourage you, because if you're living paycheck to paycheck right now, you don't have to stay there, and you are definitely not alone. More than half of Americans describe themselves this way. So don't feel isolated, don't feel defeated. I'm here to give you the tips you need to break this cycle. So let's get into it. Tip number one is you need to be tracking your spending. I would recommend that you do that for a minimum of 30 days, just so that you can see where the leak is in your financial boat. That's the whole point. There's got to be a leak, and we need to plug that leak, but we need to figure out where it is. When I say track your spending, I'm not talking about making a budget. I just want you to keep an eye on where every dollar goes for that 30 days. You can do this in a journal, on an app, a note in your phone, but just every dollar you spend, make a note of it. Where did it go? And be really just normal in this 30 days. Don't try to be disciplined so you can say, oh, I have no leaks. I just want you to see. Don't think about budgets. Don't think about cutting spending. Just see, how am I regularly and consistently spending my money? This is a really important key to figuring out where we can find the savings that we need to find so that you can have that breathing room. And sometimes this step is all you need, because once you start seeing where that spending is happening and where that leak might be, you might have enough motivation right then and there to make the changes and start freeing up some money in your budget. The next step that you are going to want to take is making a bare bones, very minimal budget that covers the four walls of your life. This is going to include housing, food and medicine, utilities, and transportation. These are the musts, the non-negotiables, and then anything else that falls outside of those categories are the things that you probably will have some wiggle room on. Things that you can make changes, cut back on, or cut out. This bare bones budget is gonna help you see exactly how much income you have to work with. The next thing I want you to focus on is changing your mindset. I want you to stop saying or thinking something along the lines of, I'm just really bad with money. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, growing up in the American public school system, when I did, I was taught nothing about financial management, how to balance a checkbook, interest rates, no financial education whatsoever. In fact, the state that I live in just only a couple years ago made it a graduation requirement for high schoolers to get some level of personal finance education. Only 27 states currently require it here in the US, and even those that do require usually just a semester or so. That's not enough time. We're often taught in school many things that most of us are never going to need. But when it comes to money and finances, we make money decisions every single day. We are telling our kids, fill out the FAFSA. I'm in the process of doing that now with one of mine. And it's all about loans, loans, loans. But nobody's teaching the kids what's happening when they're taking out the loans, how to make payments on the principal rather than just the interest, how to negotiate interest rates, how compounding interest works for or against you. I think you get my point, and I will get off my soapbox, but you can see I'm passionate about this. We aren't taught enough in our society about financial planning and how to manage our money, but we need that information. So if you've not learned about money management, you're not bad with money. You're just learning a new skill now, and better late than never. Redefine how you think about it. You're developing a new skill set. You're developing more knowledge. You're getting better at being good at money. You're not just bad at money. Having the mindset that you're bad at money or letting other people tell you you've been bad with money in the past leads you to just make poor decisions. You think, oh, I overspent again, I broke my budget, I'm bad with money, or oh, I'm always in debt because I just can't get out of debt. I'm just so bad with money. You don't have to say that about yourself. That doesn't have to be true about yourself. And I want you to stop defining yourself that way. There are so many resources out there to help you be better with money. You can subscribe to channels like mine. In fact, I encourage you to do so. I will link down in the description some of my favorite books about godly financial management. There are tons of podcasts on the topic. You could talk to a trusted family member, mentor, pastor, anyone in your life that you know is good with money. Sit down and ask if they would just share some of that wisdom with you. You do not have to keep defining yourself as being bad with money. You can learn how to be amazing at money. And that's one of the things I want to help you do. All right, once you've got that bare bones budget and you've been tracking your spending and you've changed that mindset, now it's time to figure out where is the leak in your financial boat. We're going to start by looking for the biggest leak. Let me just give you an example. Say you've noticed that you spend $100 a month more than you should on going out to eat. Here is a huge leak. Now we need to put up guardrails to help you plug that leak. Guardrails, leaks, I think I'm mixing my metaphors. You get the point. We want to plug the leak. We want to keep our financial boat afloat. So how do we plug that leak of overspending on going out to eat? Maybe we are packing lunches so we aren't tempted to go out to lunch at work. Maybe we are asking friends, hey, instead of going to dinner, I'd love to meet you for coffee. You can still get together with friends, have that time of fellowship, but you're not spending as much as you would out for dinner. Maybe this means doing a little meal prep and planning so that when you get home from work, you're less tempted to order some takeout because you've got a meal ready to go. I could go on, but the point is we need to find a way to put a guardrail or a plug in that leak and make sure that we are not allowing ourselves to keep that money leaking out. Once you've figured out what to do with your biggest leak, and this might take a little bit of time, a little bit of trial and error, then you move on to the next leak and the next one. And you'll start to notice that you have some wiggle room and some breathing room in your budget. And that leads to the next step, which is building up some emergency savings so that you don't get back into that paycheck to paycheck cycle when something unexpected happens. Hopefully by now you've found a little bit of wiggle room. I want you to take the extra money, the leaks that you've plugged, and I want you to just chuck it away and save it. Now, if you are in debt, and a lot of people living paycheck to paycheck are, you need to decide how much of an emergency fund, emergency savings you want to have while you're still focusing on the next step, which is paying off your debt. I actually made a video about that. I will put a card here and link it down in the description to help you figure out, because for each person it's going to be a little bit different. How much should I have at this step? How much is the goal number for my emergency savings if I still have debt that I need to pay off? So I would really encourage you to check that video out just to help give you some guidelines for figuring out that number for you and your unique circumstances. We want to make sure that you have some kind of a cushion so that between paychecks, if you needed to tap into it for something important, you could. You won't want to have to rely on a credit card. You won't have to borrow money from someone. You'll have your own reserves ready to go, and you're no longer living paycheck to paycheck. And that's going to feel amazing. As you're plugging up those leaks and saving more and more money in a cushion, you're going to see that that momentum is going to pick up pretty quickly. And it's going to be really encouraging when it does. Now, this is the time to start getting really serious about other places that you can cut. Go through and look, are there subscriptions and things that I'm paying for every month that I'm no longer using, or things I can part with for a while? Try doing savings challenges or no spend months just to see if you can get that savings up a little bit faster. Some people get really motivated and start making even bigger changes, like getting a second job, a roommate, or even relocating to a cheaper area to live. Remember, whatever changes or cuts you're doing at this stage, go with that momentum, follow God's lead, and just be obedient to that. It's not going to be forever. You're going to be able to pull back or make changes back to different things. This is not always going to be this way, but if you're sensing that momentum, if you're feeling really motivated, just lean into that and keep going, because it's just gonna get you where you wanna be faster. Once you have that budget in place and a little bit of cushion, you're going to wanna add even more breathing room, and that means paying off debt next. To figure out how to do that, click over into this video and I will see you over there. Thanks for watching.